She is a top female assassin, but hides in the middle of the city, becoming a true housewife. 3 years ago, Bona temporarily left the assassin organization, completely saying goodbye to her past life. Since then, she has taken care of her family every day, took her daughter to school, and lived peaceful days like many other ordinary mothers. But her husband Taesung doesn't know at all that the gentle wife in front of him, who used to be a professional assassin who scares others to hear his name. After a 3-year break, Bona is about to officially return to the organization. Taesung thinks his wife is simply looking for a new job. To congratulate Bona on his return to work, he happily promised that he would definitely come home early tonight to be with his family. But in reality, Taesung is also hiding his true work from Bona. On the way to take her daughter to school, a silver car suddenly changed lanes, approaching Bona's left. While ordinary people didn't have time to react, the smile on her face immediately disappeared, and her gaze also turned dangerous. This detail shows that even though he has been away from the world of assassins for 3 years, Bona's instinctual sense of danger has not disappeared. She can detect the threat at the first moment. And it also shows that what Bona cherishes most now is the normal life that she has to struggle to have. In the eyes of other parents, Bona always has a very different calm look. Because for someone who has experienced countless life and death tasks like her, most of the things that happen in daily life are no longer enough to make her panic. On the way to get coffee, a passerby accidentally bumped into a Chahet cupboard where he was placing things, and a Chahet cup immediately fell, heading straight for a boy. When the people around him had not yet had time to react, Bona quickly reached out to support Sheikok accurately. The relationship between Bona and her mother-in-law is not too close, but when she has time, she still takes the initiative to go to her mother-in-law's store to help. In front is a basket of cabbage that needs to be processed. For the average person, it may take a long time to finish. But for Bona, a top female assassin who has gone through countless dangerous missions, it's nothing more than a simple warm-up. Not only is she proficient in firearms, but she is also extremely good at using a variety of weapons and tools. Bona's mother-in-law has long been on guard about her lack of work. According to her, all the economic burdens in the family are on Taesung's shoulders, making her always feel that her son is under too much pressure. Not only that, she also thinks that Bona is not mature enough in the way she treats people. She still remembered the first time Bona met her future mother-in-law. She even came empty-handed, without preparing any gifts. It could be seen from such a small thing that Bona used to only know how to perform tasks. So he really lacked experience in the rules of family and society. The cause of all this stemmed from her past. Bona was orphaned since childhood. What she learns in life is just how to complete missions and how to survive. Aside from murder, she knew almost nothing about the lives of ordinary people. But in order to integrate into society, as well as protect the small home that she has, over the years Bona has not stopped learning how to be a true wife and bride. While her mother-in-law was still chatting with others, Bona quickly finished slicing the whole pot of cabbage. Seeing that person's amazing speed, her mother-in-law was very surprised by Bona's ability. The moment that makes Bona happiest is when a supermarket discounts. Because of this, she can save a lot of money. She herself has no job. Bona really didn't want to put more pressure on her husband. At the same time, a male employee often harassed female colleagues, and even harassed the girl. Seeing that scene, Bona didn't hesitate. She conveniently grabbed a potato and threw it directly at the opponent with absolute precision. Immediately afterwards, she scattered a bag of black beans on the floor, causing the man to slip and fall in humiliation. Finally, a beautiful kill. After returning home, Bona still waited for her husband to return. But I waited for a long time and still didn't see Taesung appear. What she received in the end was just a message. Taesung says that because of an unexpected job, he probably won't be able to go home tonight. It turns out that Taesung is a special reporter. This time, he went to a nightclub in Hassan to investigate a case related to the new drug mentioned in the news. At the bar, Taesung quickly locks the target on a man suspected of being involved in a drug ring and then silently follows him. However, during the monitoring, Taesung's state was extremely impatient. He constantly checks the time on his phone. Just from this detail, it can be seen that even though he is on duty, Taesung is still thinking about his family. He wants to fulfill his promise. Unfortunately, the man in front still had no intention of stopping the car. But in the next second, the car in front suddenly exploded. In the distance, a mysterious man was standing there quietly, staring at the burning car. Today is the first day Bona officially returns to the organization. After taking her daughter to kindergarten, she would immediately put the sticker on the car window, put on sunglasses, and pedal the accelerator and rush straight to the company. On the way, the in-car radio suddenly broadcast the news about the explosion that occurred in Hassan last night. At the same time, The news also reported that a man surnamed HYNH had just completed his prison sentence after 3 years in prison on suspicion of murdering his pregnant wife. 3 years ago, HYNH drove drunk and caused an accident. The pregnant wife, who was sitting in the passenger seat at that time, also unfortunately died. Therefore, HYNH was convicted and had to go to jail. The company where Bona works looks like an ordinary electronics business on the surface. But when she arrived at the control gate and was about to swipe the card, she suddenly stopped. Because after 3 years of living the life of a housewife, this is the first time Bona feels strange when she has to step back into the world of assassins. She didn't know if the employee car she left 3 years ago could still help her return to her old position. Entering the company, Bona met her former colleagues again. Everyone even prepared a simple welcome for her to celebrate the day she officially returned to the team. However, Captain Kim, who plays an important role in the group, did not appear. The colleague explained that he had gone to handle work last night. As soon as he finished speaking, Mr. Kim walked into the office. On Bona's first day back, Kim arranged for her to join a meeting. But this was not an ordinary meeting at all, but actually an assassination mission. Since customers only have time in the evening, Kim wants Bona to work overtime to complete tasks. But Bona had her own business tonight, so she decided to finish the meeting on the same day. Bona quickly arrives at the location of the mission. Through the communication device, she still keeps in touch with her teammates. At this time, the 3 people led by Mr. Kim were sitting in front of a surveillance device, waiting for the outcome of the mission. Looking at Kim's hands that kept clenching, it could be seen that he was even more tense than Bona. Because Bona had been away from the assassins for 3 years anyway. No one could be sure if her abilities would remain at the same peak as before. The location of the action this time was arranged on the rooftop of a church. Underneath the bench on the rooftop was hidden weapons. While still communicating with his teammates over the radio, Bona quickly assembled the sniper rifle. She placed the gun on the stone platform, pointed the barrel towards the target hundreds of meters away, observed the direction of the wind, adjusted the center of sight, and confirmed the target. Then, Bona gently pulled the trigger, and the bullet immediately penetrated the target with absolute accuracy. Seeing this scene, Mr. Kim and the rest finally breathed a sigh of relief. Bona still maintained his form. As soon as the mission ended, Taesung also returned home safely. Bona went to the door of her friend's flower cave, knowing Bona's true identity, and had long been worried about her. She fears that Taesung will one day discover the other identity that Bona has been hiding for years. To her friend's concern, Bona recounts what happened the day before she returned to the organization. That day, Taesung had clearly promised that he would be home early in the evening. But in the end, he still broke his promise because of his job. Bona knew that her husband didn't do it on purpose. She also understands that Taesung is just struggling with work, although it is inevitable to be disappointed in her heart. Bona finally had a smile. Even she herself felt that her current self was unbelievable. Because before, when she was an assassin, Bona never thought that one day she would have a family. Since childhood, she has been an orphan. She used to think that she would have to live alone for the rest of her life. Unexpectedly, she finally met a person she loved, and then had a home that belonged to her. Bona's disappointment was because she cared about her husband. She was sad because she was worried about him. And the smile on her face is an expression that she appreciates all that she has. So no matter what happens, she won't blame Taesung. But Bona couldn't have expected that her husband's belief that she would forever not see the other side of her was about to be damaged in a way she couldn't expect. Because soon after, Bona suddenly received a mysterious package. Inside were photos of her while carrying out assassination missions. Not only that, Taesung also happened to know from the news that the Sparrow assassin who once terrified the whole underworld has officially returned. It seems that Taesung knows the identity of the Sparrow, because at that moment, his gaze slowly turned towards the wife who was standing in front of him. The target that Bona assassinated yesterday was found dead. Police quickly arrived at the scene to investigate. After an autopsy, they determined that the victim died from a bullet that went straight through the temple. Inspector Lee found the bullet lodged deep in the wall. Based on the trajectory of the projectile, he immediately conducted calculations and finally locked the suspect's location in a church about 500 meters away. Such a terrifying ability to snipe at long distances immediately reminded him of the name Sparrow, the legendary assassin who once terrified countless people. Not long after, the news of Chime's reemergence to the lake immediately appeared on television, shocking public opinion. But when Bona's husband Taesung saw the news, his expression immediately changed. Because 4 years ago, he himself was in charge of investigating cases related to Chime. Over the years, he has always wanted to expose the true identity of this mysterious assassin. But as soon as the investigation got closer to the truth, the Sparrow suddenly disappeared. All clues were also cut off accordingly. Now, After 4 years, the sparrow has once again appeared. Taesung silently swears that this time he must find him himself. But he absolutely couldn't believe that the assassin he had been searching for the past 4 years was his wife Bona, who was still by his side every day. Inspector Lee began examining the surveillance camera system around the church. But the result made him extremely disappointed. On the day of the incident, all cameras around the church were previously deleted. Coincidentally, at that time, the believers were practicing singing inside, so no one paid attention to whether a stranger entered or not. The singing also inadvertently completely covered the sound of gunfire. The cars that appeared in the area were also parked in the basement. From the time of the assassination to the retreat, the whole process seemed so perfect that it was impossible to find any loopholes. But Leader Kim still can't help but worry about Bona. Anyway, she has been out of the assassin profession for 4 years. Now, she has become a mother. Whether being away from dangerous missions for a long time will make her physical condition distant. Her ability to judge whether or not it will be affected by family life are all things that cannot be determined. And the truth quickly proves that after becoming a mother, Bona has indeed changed a lot. The assassin's office, which was cold and serious every day, has now completely turned into a different place just because of the video calls between her and her daughter. The two also talk to each other about all kinds of everyday things. It is no different from an ordinary mother taking care of a small child. At the crime scene, Inspector Lee found a shark-shaped sticker. Although he could not determine whether this was a sign left by Chime or not, he immediately handed it over to the technical department to conduct an examination. The general thing is that this shark-shaped sticker is Taesung's daughter's favorite first dish. But the problem is that this sticker can be easily found anywhere, so it is completely impossible to use it to prove anything. Taesung and Inspector Lee both wondered, why did the sparrow Chime reappear after 4 years of disappearance? During the past 4 years, where has he been? At first, Taesung didn't suspect his wife at all. Until that evening, when the two met, he accidentally saw a shark-shaped sticker on Bona's arm. At that moment, Taesung's gaze immediately changed. While the couple was still having dinner, as usual, a short-haired woman was quietly tracking all information related to Bona on the walls of her room, covered with all sorts of documents. It contains not only information about Bona's current family, but also photos. The next morning, the short-haired woman carried 6 cups of coffee and walked straight into the department where Bona was working. Her name is HYNH Do, a new member who has just been recruited by Old Kim. HYNH Do's forte is preparing potions. The poison concocted by her own hands could quickly blend in her body in just a few seconds. Even when examined by forensics, it leaves almost no traces. But the real purpose of HYNH Do's appearance here is not to work at all. Ever since she entered the company, her gaze had always locked on Bona. It wasn't until the evening, when the whole room was having a party, that HYNH Do finally took the initiative to find Bona, who was on a video call to her family. Not caring if there were people around or not, she directly called out the code name of the sparrow. Bona immediately realized that something was wrong. Not long after the two separated, Taesung suddenly received a mysterious message. The sender of the message claimed to know the true identity of the sparrow and left an address. Wanting to find out the truth, Taesung goes to the restaurant indicated in the message alone. Meanwhile, HYNH Do did not appear at the company all day. It wasn't until the evening that Agent Chi discovered the true purpose she was hiding. Just as he was about to report this to Old Kim, Bona, who had already finished his shift, suddenly returned to the company. She gives Chi a photo of Taesung unconscious, asking him to trace the location of the message. After that, Bona didn't say another word and immediately walked into the arsenal. Just 10 seconds later, she carried a suitcase and left. She looked at the content of the message. It requires Bona to personally bring a person to meet the opponent. Otherwise, Taesung's life will be in danger. The main sender of the message is HYNH Do, it turns out from the beginning. The real target that made her join the company was Bona. But HYNH Do also has another name, Song Ah. 15 years ago, on a cold winter, her father had just been released from prison and returned home. But soon after, he continued to abuse HYNH Do. It was under that circumstances that Bona shot and killed her father. Bona stood in front of HYNH Do, pointing a gun at her and threatening her to tell Taesung's whereabouts. But faced with the muzzle of a gun and a threat to her life, HYNH Do was strangely calm. She doesn't even seem to see Bona as a threat at all. Bona then drank the poison prepared by HYNH Do's own hands. But looking at HYNH Do's astonished expression, it seemed that things were not so simple. Because in the past, although it was Bona who killed her father, it was Bona who saved HYNH Do from that suffering family. The episode is over. See you on the next video. She is sure that Hwin Do will not harm her, because Bona herself has changed her life. More than 10 years ago, at Christmas, Bona first met Huindu when she was a child. At a glance, she realized that she was living in a family full of suffering. Because she wants to help Huindu fulfill a wish, Bona tells her to open the window after returning home. Although she was still skeptical, Huindu finally followed her words. As a result, just as her father was abusing her, a bullet accurately pierced the back of her father's head. The reason Bona became an assassin was never because she loved killing, but because she wanted to pull people who were sinking in despair out of the abyss of suffering. For her, every time she pulls the trigger, the person who is killed is not just a human, but a demon who is ruining other people's lives. So, as soon as Huindu joined the company, Bona realized her identity. Like this time, there was more disappointment in her eyes, because the child she had saved was finally on the same path as her. In the past, Bona saved Huindu just hoping that she could escape from the past, become a normal person, and live a peaceful and happy life. But now, when she sees Huindu choosing to become an assassin, is clearly completely contrary to her original expectations. Bona pulled back the curtains, revealing a thick wall of investigative documents about her. In fact, Huindu has been paying attention to Bona since 6 years ago. At that time, while working part-time, she saw the woman in front of her and immediately realized that Bona was the one who had shot her father in the past. For so many years, Huindu has never forgotten Bona, even always considering her as a hero in his heart. But when she meets Bona again, she feels her own confidence collapse in an instant. Because in her mind, Chim Sparrow used to be so strong that it made everyone terrified. She should not turn into a woman in a very normal way, busy every day for her family as it is now. Therefore, what Huindu wants to do is not harm Bona, but to awaken the top female assassin who once terrified everyone again. Bona is grateful for her husband's arrival, because he himself changed her life and helped her have the most precious daughter in the world. Bona's words touched Huindu's heart deeply, and at the same time made her understand for the first time that the hero she was always looking for was not a cold female assassin. Unintentionally, it was a woman who was willing to choose a new life for her family. From that moment on, Huindu's feelings for Bona not only did not decrease, but also became more consistent. Because of Huindu's joining, the company decided to organize a picnic. On the way to the picnic site, the police found a body nearby that had been stripped of its organs. This area has recently had many disappearances in a row. Since last winter, up to 7 people have mysteriously disappeared. Although the police mobilized large forces to search and investigate, they were unable to find any useful clues. While eating, Huindu discovered that there was no phone signal at all, and Assistant Chi ran out alone to find the waves. But just as he catches the signal, a figure suddenly appears and knocks him unconscious. The rest of the people were completely unaware of what was happening, still happily enjoying the indoor gathering. Bona even held a drinking contest with the leader of the other department. In the end, she succeeded in making the other party fall first, but she also lost consciousness because she was drunk. And as soon as Bona fell, the traffickers were about to begin their final stages. Soon, an old woman and a man of strength brought cups of honey water in front of everyone. After they all drank, the medicine began to work and Mr. Kim and the others could only watch as one by one collapsed. In fact, the reason Kim organized this picnic was to destroy the entire human trafficking ring. Therefore, before leaving, the group soon prepared everything thoroughly. From the beginning, Kim did not see this as a mere arrest. Because when dealing with a criminal organization that hides for a long time, the most dangerous thing is not their tricks, but their ability to disguise themselves as ordinary people. Only when they actively arrange in advance can they completely dig into the position between the hunter and the prey. Assistant Chi quickly used the detector and detected a signal jammer hidden nearby. Temin even released a microscopic remote-controlled bug, allowing it to follow the smoke and slip into the ground, successfully discovering the secret base where the traffickers were hiding. When the old woman brought honey water in front of everyone, Mr. Kim immediately realized something was wrong. He deliberately distracted her, and Huindu took the opportunity to take the tool hidden in the earring to check the honey water. The results showed that the inside had indeed been drugged. But the traffickers did not know that Huindu had secretly put a neutralizing drug in each person's cup beforehand. Therefore, the new sleeping pill cannot work. Huindu went out alone to look for the missing, while Kim and the others stayed in the house, waiting for the traffickers to reveal themselves. However, during the search, Huindu was suddenly gagged by Temin, not having time to understand what happened. He saw a group of traffickers heading towards the house. Temin led Huindu into their underground lair. But what Huindu couldn't expect was that Temin seriously thought that the missing person might have been hidden in the refrigerator. At that moment, a strange noise suddenly sounded in front of him. Huindu followed the sound and indeed found the missing person locked inside. As soon as they found the arrested person, The traffickers in the house also began to take action. They in turn tied up those who had actually fallen into a coma. But they could not expect that Mr. Kim and the others would suddenly cause a stir at this time, which did not appear to be affected by drugs. Although the three of them were tied together, Mr. Kim's unbelievably calm expression made the traffickers begin to feel uneasy. In particular, Mr. Kim constantly looked at his phone, making them curious to know what secrets were being hidden. But the moment the trafficker reached out to grab the phone, all the lights in the room suddenly went out. After a few seconds of being immersed in darkness, when the lights came back on, all three of Mr. Kim were untied. Traffickers always think that they are in the hands of everyone's fate. But they didn't know that from the moment they took out the cups of honey, they had stepped into the trap prepared by Mr. Kim. A sudden gunshot rang out, breaking the tense atmosphere. Faced with the muzzle of a black gun, Mr. Kim did not continue to attack, because he knew the real key card had not yet appeared. Just as the three of them were surrounded, Bona, who was in a coma, finally woke up. Although she still didn't fully understand what was happening, the situation in front of her was enough for her to understand everything. The traffickers see Bona as just a woman, so they don't take her for granted. But they didn't know that what they were about to face was a real female assassin. The leader knew that he could not run away and knelt down and begged for his life. After being beaten in a fight, they called the police to confess, but no one dared to say the names of Bona and her comrades. Only declared that because of internal turmoil, the case was solved without the police needing to get involved. Meanwhile, a criminal who had abused many children, sentenced to 16 years in prison, has expired and been released. According to court regulations, after being released from prison, the criminal is required to wear electronic devices on his legs to be monitored. But even so, outside the prison, there were still a large number of protesters. They were all parents of children who had been abused by him. They can't accept someone who has ruined so many families, only to spend 16 years in prison and then return to society. However, in the face of the angry crowd, the criminal not only had no remorse, but also had a perverted smile. This scene happened to be seen by T-Sung. When the criminal left, police officer Lee still quietly followed him. He had a hunch that the Sparrow assassin would definitely take action against this guy. Over the years, Police Lee has always investigated the activities of the Sparrow killer. He discovered that the people who died at the hands of the Sparrow had different identities, but they all had one thing in common. All of them are dangerous criminals. The strange thing is that in all the previous cases, Chim Sparrow has never dealt with child abusers. To find out the true identity of Chim Sparrow, Police Officer Lee Still asked his colleagues to investigate all child sex offenders who have been released from prison for nearly 15 years. The results surprised him. In the past 15 years, a total of 8 criminals have completed their prison terms. However, all 8 people suddenly died on the day of release. The only person alive was the criminal who had just been released from prison in front of his eyes. That is also the reason why Police Lee decided to follow quietly. He couldn't determine if this person was the Sparrow's next target. Anyway, the cause of death of all 8 previous criminals was determined to be an accident. Completely unlike the way the Sparrow used to be a cult finish. He knew that maybe the Sparrow wouldn't appear today. But to test his judgment, he still decided to silently observe for a day. As the car passed the rest stop, the criminal suddenly asked to go to the toilet. However, as soon as he entered the toilet, he took out a mysterious piece of paper from his pocket. This piece of paper was discovered by him by chance while changing clothes. On it was written a sentence asking him to go to the second toilet at the designated rest stop. A few minutes later, 2 policemen who were waiting outside suddenly discovered that the electronic device on the criminal's leg sounded an alarm. The 2 immediately rushed to the toilet, but there was not a shadow inside. The device that displayed his location was quickly leaving the toilet and moving to the distance. Just as the 2 policemen were about to give chase, they were called to a stop by Police Lee. After understanding the situation, he decided to personally participate in the pursuit. But they couldn't believe that the real criminal was still hiding in the last toilet. The person who helped him remove the electronics at his feet was Team In, and Mr. Kim had been waiting in the car for a long time. It turned out that Lao Jin's group had already planned in advance. Through investigation, they discovered that the criminal had been confined to the same room with a man named Lao Park. Park was sentenced to 3 years in prison for distributing depraved products and was released 3 months ago. According to the results of the investigation, after the criminal was released, the 2 planned to cross the border abroad together. There, they will build a base to produce erotic toys. Therefore, Lao Kim decided to use the old way, creating an accident on the same day the criminal was released. As long as he could get him into the car, Jean would transfer him to the nearby Aries forest. The group's doctor examined the criminal's body beforehand and vowed to produce evidence that he was allergic to the birch tree. Old Kim pretended to be a subordinate to Lao Park, saying that he had been ordered to pick him up at the pier. But the criminal was still very vigilant. He did not immediately get into the car, but asked to call Lao Park first to confirm his identity. Fortunately, Lao Kim had prepared in advance and saved Lao Uncle's phone number in the contact book. After the criminal called, Lao Kim's accomplices immediately intercepted the signal, causing the call to display a fake unable to connect status. This battle of wits finally ended with a victory belonging to Lao Kim. The criminal finally agreed to get into the car. But on the way to the pier, he suddenly suggested that he stop by a village first, because he wanted to see with his own eyes what the child he had harmed had grown up to become. T-Min really couldn't hear it anymore, and directly knocked him unconscious. After the car arrives at another secret base, Huin-Du and T-Min quickly change positions. At the same time, Lee finally tracked down the location of the electronic device. But when they arrived, the thing locked into the device wasn't the criminal at all, but just a prosthetic leg. T-Min handed the device through the window to Lao Kim, and then Lao Kim conveniently threw it onto a truck. Thus, the direction of the police's pursuit was completely lost. Soon after, they discovered that police had set up a checkpoint at a toll booth 20 kilometers ahead. There was not much time left, and Lao Jin was forced to leave here quickly. At this moment, the criminal in the car suddenly woke up, but he didn't immediately resist, but continued to close his eyes and pretend to be comatose. Lao Kim's car drove straight towards a nearby village. As soon as she passes a turn, a car driven by a mother suddenly stops in front of T-Min's car. Because the opponent ran too slowly, plus the road only allowed one-way traffic, T-Min could not overcome, so he had to keep his distance. Huin-Du turned his head to check, and saw that the criminal in the back seat was still motionless. But the moment she turned her head, the criminal suddenly opened her eyes. Immediately afterwards, he pulled out a knife from his pocket. This was the knife he had secretly taken at the previous stop. The sudden attack caused Lao Kim and Huin-Du to fall into a coma for a moment. The criminal immediately got out of the car, blocked the mother's car with a knife, and quickly fled. Although Lao Jin was seriously injured in the shoulder, his first reaction after regaining consciousness was to ask everyone to continue their mission. Because for them, this action is not just about arresting a criminal. More importantly, they must stop him from continuing to harm innocent people. T-Min controls the drone, constantly monitoring the location of the criminal from above. Through analyzing the route, she discovers that he is heading toward the pier. It seemed that he was going to get on the boat to escape. At this time, Bona was still shopping with her daughter. But when she watched the news and learned that the criminal had escaped and even kidnapped a baby, her expression immediately changed. It wasn't until night fell that the criminal finally reached the pier. To take advantage of more time to escape, he pushed the car with force, causing it to slide down the slope. Old Kim couldn't see death without saving the baby, so he had to give up the pursuit of the criminal to save the child first. The baby was finally safe and sound, but the criminal managed to get on the boat. He thought that he had completely escaped, and even stood on the boat frantically provoking Lao Jin and the people standing on the shore. But soon, he couldn't laugh anymore. Bona quickly wiped out all the surrounding surveillance cameras, and at the same time erased all traces related to this action. When police officer Lee arrived at the scene, he saw a very familiar pattern of death, a cult of death. This is the characteristic sign of the Sparrow Killer. This scene also completely reversed his previous judgment, because the criminals in previous cases all died in accidents. Until this moment, police officer Lee has not been able to determine whether he has finally found the truth, or is moving further and further away from the truth. In fact, if he didn't come to the end of the road, Lao Kim didn't want to let Bona personally do it, because he understood very well, as long as Bona participated in the action, the police would definitely follow the clues and discover her existence. At present, Bona has carried out too many tasks. The higher the rate of action, the greater the risk of her identity being exposed. After completing the mission, Bona returns home, but right at the door, she discovers a package of toys sent to her daughter. Underneath the toy is accompanied by a mysterious business card, all of which are written in Russian. Waiting until her daughter was fast asleep, Bona quietly brought the toy into the kitchen. She took a fruit-peeling knife and drew a line on the back of the toy. There was indeed a secret electronic device hidden inside, but Bona only glanced at one and immediately threw it into the glass of water. At this time, T-Sung also returned to the door, but before he could open the door, the phone received a mysterious message. The next morning, he cooked breakfast for two mothers and daughters by himself, making Bona both surprised but also very happy. Soon-Jun also woke up and took the doll with him, watching his daughter play with the doll. Bona was a little confused because this doll had previously been attached to an eavesdropping device. Although she had fought back with the other party before, she was still uneasy in her heart. After breakfast, T-Sung dragged the frustrated corpse to the company. Even his colleagues who talked to a worker who had just fallen from a height didn't want to listen. Meanwhile, Jong Jin has not given up on his intention to investigate Bona and has proposed a new investigation project. The subordinate teacher continued to plunge headlong into the case without results, and the director objected angrily. But once Zhang Jin made up his mind, he still stubbornly did it. Subordinates blamed Zhang Jin for being hot-tempered, but thinking about the recent accidents, it is very difficult to understand. Zhang Jin speculated that it was very likely that those accidents were just Bona's background, and that his sniper skills weren't the only method he used. She still couldn't think of a good way to catch Bona. On Bona's side, she brought the eavesdropper for Team In to study. Soon after, her team also received a new order. This time the target was Zhang Gu. This guy thinks that his father is a parliamentarian, so he gives himself the right to be a lord. After torturing them, the beautiful girls came and cruelly pushed the victim to fall from a height to create a scene like the victim chose to donate her life to have a new life. There must have been a dozen girls who fell into his hands. However, the sentence for this guy was only light, with a 2-year suspended sentence, and after that, he was free to continue to make storm. However, handling this case is a bit difficult because there is only 1 month left until the election of the counselor's father. To avoid affecting him, his father locked him tightly in a casino, and forbade him from going out. Witnessing the stupid behavior of the bastard Zhang Gu, Bona was angry on behalf of the victims and took the initiative to accept this case. She also wanted to propose the day of the mission, let him win the lottery, because she wanted to make the happiest day of his life the day of his death. Referring to the day of his death, Bona was startled to remember something important. At that moment, her mother-in-law's phone called, causing her to hurriedly ask for a leave of absence from the meeting to run home urgently, and make an appointment for everyone to discuss it tomorrow. Meanwhile, T-Sung arrived at the scene of the unfortunate workers' fall 2 weeks ago, concluding that the initial investigation was caused by the victim's carelessness. The task of the team is to verify whether this is really personal misfortune or a murder case labeled as an accident to be unjustly hidden into oblivion. When asked about the contractor, he swore that both the police, the Ministry of Labor, and the Ministry of Transport had unanimously closed the application as a personal fault. The company's chairman was also kind enough to follow the labor insurance process, and also used his personal money to support an additional amount of money to comfort his family. T-Sung continued to ask his uncle, who worked the same shift as the victim that day. The uncle immediately recounted that on the day of the incident, the victim smelled strongly of alcohol and protective gear, but he refused to wear it. He reminded him several times that he kept ignoring him, and he praised the chairman for handling the victim's case smoothly, and he was extremely attentive to the workers. But T-Sung still couldn't believe it, doubting his uncle's words. So he went to the restaurant that the workers often visited to investigate the situation. On Bona's side, today is the day of T-Sung's father's death. Every year, T-Sung's mother makes a grand tray, and from the day Bona came home to be a bride, she considered her as a high-class maid, forced to prepare all kinds of things for the ceremony. Her mother-in-law took Bona to the market to buy things, but deliberately checked and made it difficult for her to see which type of fish to choose. On this side, T-Sung pretended to come to lunch and then asked the owner of the restaurant. The owner confided. The victim is the type of person who insists on not drinking. No matter how sad it is, he absolutely does not touch alcohol. However, recently he and his wife were arguing. The victim was a very obedient person to his wife, and his wife used to work as a maid for the president's house. Hearing this, T-Sung also partly guessed the truth. On this side, Bona, after returning from the market, always delivered all the heavy belongings. Looking at the tray of ingredients that needed to be handled, how many painful memories of the mental whippings. The harsh training of her mother-in-law in the past few years came back. So this time, she was determined not to let herself suffer any more wrinkles. Bona pulled her sleeve to buy a knife, processing everything in one note. But just because she gave her some garlic and spices, her mother-in-law shouted at her for being useless. Bona took off her apron and ran to buy new vegetables to finish the story. Meanwhile, T-Sung rushed to the victim's house to inquire about his wife. But the neighbor said that she had just finished taking care of the monks for her husband, and that she had called a truck to move away in the night. T-Sung guessed that if he moved in such a hurry, he probably didn't even get the house deposit in time, and he couldn't find a phone number when he went to the real estate brokerage offices around there. At that time, he received a message from his sister urging him to hurry home, because today is the day of his father's death. The important thing is that his wife is being made difficult by her mother to breathe. T-Sung stopped the investigation and hurriedly ran home. As soon as he arrived, he saw that Bona's finger was stabbed by a fishbone. He hurriedly bandaged it and snatched the apron to wash the dishes for him. Bona is afraid that her mother-in-law will find out, but T-Sung tells his wife to let him take care of it. Unexpectedly, T-Sung didn't finish washing the dishes, but her mother-in-law came out of the room. Seeing her son from childhood to adulthood washing dishes, and Bona sitting next to her, the mother-in-law immediately went mad on the spot. The sister-in-law saw the thunderstorm and quickly ran away. As soon as she met her two sisters who had just arrived, she immediately told her that her mother was looking for something ridiculous with Bona. Inside the house, his mother-in-law rushed in to try to snatch Taesung's gloves back, but he insisted on holding them tightly, explaining to his wife that Bona's hand was injured. Her mother-in-law immediately turned to suspect Bona of deliberately faking illness and pretending to be sick to avoid work. Taesung couldn't stand it anymore. He decided to deal with it. In front of his mother and sister, he told him that it was clearly the day of his father's death, and that the person who carried the handcuffs on his back was Bona. He also told the two sisters directly, asking them to come early and help with one hand, not to push them all on Bona's head anymore. The eldest sister immediately got angry because of his attitude in defense of his wife, and cursed directly that his wife forgot her mother. The mother-in-law was able to exonerate Bona, insisting that the teacher abused her son. Seeing his mother dragging Bona's family background out to speak, Taesung couldn't hold back anymore, dragging Bona back angrily. The owl's mother-in-law immediately grabbed the apple and threw it at Taesung. Who would have suspected that Bona reflexively picked up the apple and returned it to her mother-in-law, making her angry, and immediately grabbed a pile of dried fish and rushed out to physically impact Taesung. The second sister tried to intervene, so from a small spark that broke out into a fiery melee of the whole family. Looking at that chaotic scene, Bona had a strange feeling again. It's true that no matter how much the biological family quarrels and curses, they can't be apart. At this time, the sister-in-law ran back to report the shocking news. Baby June had disappeared, and the whole family rushed down to the playground under the house to search. Her mother-in-law still did not forget to blame Bona for being useless, and reluctantly told her to go home and wait for news. But Bona just needed to look at one thing that sent a chill down her mother-in-law's spine, and the whole group split up to look for it. Bona immediately called Jang-do for help. He only needed one shot to hack into the system that came around, discovering that June had left the apartment complex by himself to go to their own small house. Bona immediately ran home to meet her child and met Taesung. At that time, Jang-do also identified June running to the rooftop, and the two immediately went to find her. It turned out that June had previously asked Taesung's sister about the ancestor worship ritual, and she explained that she was inviting her relatives in heaven to eat. So June found a way to do as she said, and Bona also found her child. Looking at her daughter on tiptoe, trying to wave the plane in the sky, Bona was both angry and sad, scolding her daughter for running around, making everyone worried. June burst into tears and explained that because her mother said that her parents had already gone to heaven, she wanted to catch a big plane to take her mother to see her relatives again. At that time, everyone also came to witness this scene. Taesung was very moved to tears, and immediately went to hug the mother and daughter who were sobbing in their hearts. This tearful story made the mother-in-law have to go into the water to accept the right hand. From now on, get rid of this complicated custom for health. The next day, Bona regained 100% of her energy to go to work, and everyone learned urgently to discuss the plan to destroy Jong-gu. It is known that this guy is entrenched in the VIP floor of the casino if he wants to go there. The casino only gives out one VIP ticket every day to the most prolific guest on the general floor. The whole team closed the deal, sent Jang-do to bring his super high-tech glasses designed by himself, used this heavy weapon to sweep and become the biggest player of the day. After successfully infiltrating the VIP floor, they would take advantage of Jong-gu's vulnerability to put the cigarette in his glass of water. The special pill will cause Jong-gu's allergies to burst out all over his body after just a few minutes of soaking the drug. At this moment, Dr. Gu, as the casino's doctor, will appear, asking Jong-gu to go to the emergency room urgently. Waiting for the security guard to carry him out of the casino, Bona just needs to stand from a distance for a bullet. While Bona was confused with his plan of action, this side of Taesung's case also had new margin, and Jong-ho's colleague suddenly fell to the ground and died. From the position to the position of falling, it was the same as Jong-ho because the incident occurred in the middle of the night in a remote place. So there was not a single witness, and the police were completely disoriented. It is worth noting that the uncle looks at his gentle nose like that, but he has a lot of criminal records. 5 times in prison for theft and intentionally causing injury. Feeling that something was wrong, Taesung decided to go to see Chairman Choi of the construction group. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the corporation, he saw Chairman Choi get into the car and leave. He immediately followed him to see where he was going. At the same time at the casino, Jang Jo is carrying out his plan at the casino, thanks to his high-tech glasses. He won a lot, but he accidentally met an opponent in the middle of the road and played very well. She unleashed a trick to turn the tide, robbing Jang-do of her odds of winning and becoming the sole winner. Losing the ticket to the VIP floor, the whole plan had to be redone. Bona understood that life was not as planned, and decided to choose another option. She decided to break into the casino herself. At this time, T-Sung followed Chairman Choi, who had also been groping for the casino, but was stopped by the security guard at the door. While T-Sung was arguing with the security guard, Bona accidentally glanced at him, looking at his figure. T-Sung was surprised because he was so similar to his wife. Earlier, T-Sung and his subordinates chased Chairman Choi to the casino. At the same time, Bona went on a mission, but how unlucky it was to bump into her husband in the middle of the road. She hurriedly pulled down the edge of her hat to dodge in a hurry, but if she let him see this familiar back, it was done. Meanwhile, T-Sung pretended to chase Chairman Choi, conveniently taking a few photos to post. Meanwhile, under the direction of assistant Jang Do, Bona boarded the staff elevator to the 23rd floor. However, T-Sung outside still tried to enter the casino to catch Choi. Therefore, he asked an acquaintance at the casino to bring him in and then get on that elevator. Bona was startled and dodged her husband, just in time for her daughter's teacher to call again, causing her to hang up in a hurry and turn a step forward. T-Sung looked at the familiar gate he was about to chase after him, and the elevator door closed at the right time to help Bona narrowly. After finishing work with the teacher, Bona asked Jang Do to guard the corridor while I went up the stairs. Thanks to the supervision of her teammates, she dodged the guards, sneaked into Jong-Goo's room, immediately discarded the medicine prepared by HYNH-Do in the mineral water bottle in the refrigerator, and conveniently collected the other bottles and threw them in the trash. Just as he was planning to escape, Jang Do reported that Jong-Goo was leading his sister to his room, and she was the master who snatched his VIP card. Unable to retreat, Bona hid in the toilet and talked. Meanwhile, T-Sung and his subordinates find the casino where Chairman Choi is playing, lying that they have an appointment with him. After a while, the staff came to tell him that he didn't have an appointment with anyone. The plan failed. T-Sung still tried to go inside, but was stopped by the staff and threw them both out of there. On Bona's side, Jong-Goo invited the other girl to drink wine. Bona saw Jong-Goo secretly put a cigarette in a glass of red wine, making her worried about the fate of the other sister who was about to be harmed. Outside, T-Sung was thrown out by the staff, and he left quietly, but he was sure of one thing: the other Chairman Choi was playing gambling. Inside, the master girl suddenly called room service, and immediately afterwards, the chef pushed the food cart in and deliberately danced in front of Jong-Goo. He was eating well when he fell to the floor. At this time, the two girls showed their true faces. Both of them were also assassins. Not only that, the master girl sniffed out someone hiding in the toilet early. So, while the head chef went inside to fight Bona, she was outside enjoying the victory, but accidentally warmed the bottle of mineral water in the refrigerator that Bona had already left the medicine with. In the toilet, the female chef swung her weapon through the curtain. Bona quickly pulled the curtain to control her opponent, but her level was not medium. Hearing Jang Do keep asking questions in his headphones, which entangled his legs and hands, Bona threw the headphones out to focus on fighting. Losing contact with Bona, Jang Do went crazy as if sitting on fire. He hurriedly notified Dr. Gu to come to the rescue, then hacked all the cameras and lured the security guard to the monitoring room. However, this action inadvertently cleared the way for T-Sung, who was sneaking into the casino, walking around as easily as eating candy. Since there was no protection, T-Sung went straight to Chairman Choi's floor. Meanwhile, Bona had just repelled the female chef and followed the stairs up when she lost her soul when she saw her husband. Fortunately, she quickly dodged in time, so she was not exposed. At this moment, the chef chased her again, and Bona conveniently pulled her in. At the same time, Dr. Gu rushed into Jong-Goo's room only to find him lying fainting on the floor. And the female assassin accidentally drank the wrong bottle of poison and had a red rash all over her face, unable to breathe. When Dr. Gu asked, he found out that she and the female chef and the patriarch who were pretending to be in the security rig were actually members of a local assassin guild. And their target tonight is not Jong-Gu, but Chairman Choi. At the same time, Bona and the head chef fought into President Choi's room. He was still soaking in the bathtub at this time, completely unaware that the two female assassins outside the living room were fighting violently, even though he did not know each other's identities. Outside, T-Sung also groped to the door of Chairman Choi's room, hearing a commotion inside. He was about to think about how to open the door when BZ, pretending to be a security guard, suddenly appeared and asked him to go back urgently. Immediately afterwards, he rushed into the room, stopping the two girls. While he was too stubborn, he accidentally called Bona's name directly, which startled her to realize that this was an acquaintance. So the two sides temporarily calmed down, walked outside the casino, and the two assassin teams exchanged, talking through identities to clear up misunderstandings. At this time, BZ revealed to Bona that the real target that needed to be flown was Chairman Choi, a pervert who had escaped from prison thanks to a suspended sentence a few years ago. Not stopping there, he also hired a worker and brought his wife to work as a maid and continuously harmed him. When he found out, the worker forced him to confess or he would be broadcast in the media. Who would have thought that in order to kill the mouth, Mr. Choi splurged money to bribe his coworker, a man with a criminal record full of him. That guy made the worker fall to the ground and die. Then Choi turned the case into an accident caused by the worker's carelessness. And the other guy's later fall was not a coincidence. This assassin organization, after investigating the industry, wanted Choi to pay the right place where the worker died. Now, the last piece of the puzzle that needs to be done is the name of Chairman Choi. It turned out that they had dealt with Jong-gu to borrow his breath to climb to the VIP floor. Their original plan was to set fire to Jong-gu's room and then send it to Chairman Choi's room. He was in the middle of the road and immediately clashed with Bona. BZ also conveniently revealed that recently there was a journalist who was following Choi's tail to investigate Choi. Bona was startled to immediately remember that Tae-sung had just met under the casino, and that her husband was the journalist who made her heart burn like fire. Seeing that the tasks of the two sides were the same, Dr. Gu always shook hands and cooperated, and the whole group sat down and redraw the tactical map. Jage guessed that Jong-gu would wake up thinking that he had drunk the wrong glass of poison wine, so she could approach him again to put him at odds with Chairman Choi. That way, when Choi dies, all suspicious eyes will fall on Jong-gu's head. The plan officially began. Jade appeared in front of Jong-gu again, waving her lips and dancing a few sentences that provoked his character, making him think that Chairman Choi was smiling behind his back. He frantically carried the bottle of wine and poured it directly from Chairman Choi's head. But the opportunity Jade continued to use the step beauty, sticking Jong-gu's hand in front of the room card, pretending to turn on the green light, and then calling him to his room to have sex later. The Liu Jong-gu caught the hook immediately and went on time. But as soon as he pushed the door in, he turned on his back because there were no beauties waiting, and right in front of him was President Choi. The two people who had been itching each other's eyes for a long time met in a room, and without asking each other, the two immediately rushed into a jubilant fight. At this moment, Bona took the cable car right opposite the window of the room. She leisurely held the sniper rifle, locked the target, and then gently pulled the trigger. With just one bullet, the two evil guys flew away. After the task is completed, Kim and the team all breathe into the group lightly. Even BZ's team was extremely happy to have completed the task. At home, Tae-sung takes care of his young daughter on behalf of his wife. At that moment, his subordinates called him to turn on the TV and talk. Tae-sung was stunned when he heard that Chairman Choi and Jong-gu had died. Meanwhile, Jong-jin also heard the news that assassin Bona fired a shot that knocked down two birds. He immediately drove to the scene. On this side, Tae-sung, after confirming Jong-gu's name on the list of victims, he suddenly stopped, and the memories of 5 years ago rushed back. That year, On did his best to pursue the case of a victim who was violated to the point of losing his life. It was very difficult to catch Jong-gu's name and bring it to court. I thought I would be able to reclaim justice for the deceased. Who would have thought that the court would declare innocence? Watching the victim's family cry and faint with grief, and Jong-gu calmly drag his juniors to celebrate. Tae-sung felt helplessness to the end for the first time. That night, he borrowed wine to relieve his grief and walked to Bona's side, burying his head in her lap and sobbing like a child. Now, it is Bona who has taken steps to clean up the pervert who once made him helpless, helping Tae-sung to release the hatred in his heart. After completing the mission, Bona returns home and turns into a little wife, obediently leaning on Tae-sung's lap. The two are also excited to date. Tomorrow they will take a break to enjoy a date to warm up their feelings. At that moment, Bona felt extremely peaceful and happy. However, the few encounters that revealed her identity at the casino haunted her, scaring her. She was just afraid that one day, journalist Tae-sung and the female assassin Bona would actually meet in a place where absolutely no clashes.